Welcome, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers. It's time again for another episode of Treknicity Live, the show where I talk about pretty much anything I want to do with Star Trek. And as always on Treknicity Live, no topic is taboo. In tonight's episode, we're going to talk about Star Trek uniforms. And Star Trek uniforms have changed a lot over the years, primarily going from a very sort of lame look to a pajama to a very elegant looking suit to lots of other things. I still remember the guys in skirts in the first season of Star Trek: The Next Generation. But let's not dwell too much on that, and we'll go basically to the beginning of basically where it all came from. And what was really cool is with the original series, they were pretty, the two pieces, the colored shirt with the black trousers or the fully colored skirt that like Uhura wore and the yeoman wore, and basically all the women in Starfleet wore during the original series. But the thing is, what was really cool is you had these very flattering two pieces for the guys. The color of the shirt basically indicated what division they were in. If it was red, you were either in security or you were in engineering. If you were in gold, you were in command. In blue, you were in sciences, whether it be life sciences, astrosciences, medical sciences, so on and so forth. Medical sciences changed a little bit to more of a greenish color in the later, or in some of the movies, but I digress. I like those uniforms. They just felt like they were really good for action. I felt like they were probably really easy to move around in. And so, of course, you had Kirk and Spock and everybody else, kind of running around in their two pieces. And yeah, I mean, that was basically how it all started. Fast forward a little bit to when Star Trek Phase 2, which ultimately became Star Trek: The Motionless Picture. Star Trek: The Motion Picture. You basically had these 70s kind of stylistic pajamas. I'm glad that they only lasted one movie, because I really didn't like them. I mean, they kind of looked they looked space age. It looked kind of neat and futuristic for the time, but they just didn't look like they were very functional, especially those sort of electronic buckles. If you ever seen Star Trek: The Motion Picture, basically they walked around and they had like what would effectively be probably like a comm badge type of deal, that was basically as their belt buckle, even though they didn't have a belt. That style didn't last long at all. When it was time for Star Trek 2 to come out, there was a little bit of a different style. They really went a sort of left field on this one and came out with a trouser and tunic style, which is my favorite. My absolute favorite is the trouser and tunic style that we saw basically going all the way from Star Trek 2 all the way to better parts of Star Trek Generations, which was technically Star Trek 7. I guess there was a sort of a class to it. I really enjoyed that they could look really good and still be functional. The idea that that you could have like the tunic that could open and it was sort of kind of became a jacket type of deal, and especially in Star Trek 5, Star Trek 4 and Star Trek 5, the uniform started to look a little bit more like a jacket, shirt, and pants. Even Uhura basically wore a version of that in Star Trek 3, 4, Star Trek 3 and 4. Going to Star Trek 5, she kind of went back into a little bit more of the skirt and tunic look. But I really enjoy that because, again, you could tell you could tell the department by the color of the neck, of the collar. It'd be white or it'd be red or blue or and this is what I'm talking about with the medical sciences. They went sort of like a teal green, which is kind of really cool. In fact, actually, I think my absolute favorite incarnation of that uniform is the one worn in Star Trek Six and an Undiscovered Country. Um, it just felt like, I mean, it felt like you were going to kick ass in that thing. And if not, you looked like you were about to kick ass in that thing. And I loved it so much. I was just like, wow, that is fantastic. You know, I mean, obviously they had to move on with things. They, during the movie era, you know, basically from, let's say, Star Trek 5 onwards, they started to, you know, basically at that point, Star Trek Next Generation was coming out. They had the different uniforms because of course they were much further in the future, and styles do change. It was kind of funny in Star Trek Next Generation. It looked uncomfortable because they were basically one piece unitards. They zipped in the front, and I could only imagine, like, man, if I lived in the future, that would not be comfortable. You know, I mean, holy cow. Even as a uniform, I mean, like, I've seen people in uniform plenty of times, you know, and it's not always the most comfortable, but whew, man, holy cow. I can imagine struggling to get out of that thing every day. Whew. I'm glad they kind of changed up a little bit. Of course, they kind of made it more difficult in later seasons when they changed it to so that it zipped in the back. But it's still, I mean, it was a cool uniform. You know, you had the basically the colored, you know, basically the color of the uniform denoted what your division is, or your department. Now they switched it around. You know, in the original series, if you were gold, you were in command. In Star Trek: The Next Generation and moving forward, gold was effectively engineering and operations. Red became known for command, and also gold for tactical and security. So the red shirts disappeared with Star Trek: The Next Generation, even though you know, plenty of the security staff died during that series. Now that being said, you know, I really, you know, I loved how they made some changes when they moved on to the new uniforms in Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Voyager. The look started to be a little bit more, I don't know, it was getting that rigid, sort of very stoic, very classy, robust look to them. And I was like, this is kind of cool because effectively in TNG, this area here, the tunic area was the color of your division. Whereas when they moved on to Voyager, they changed and it became more black. And the shoulder area from basically here along the collar and the collarbone area and the shoulders was the colored section, which denoted your department. And of course, every series from TNG onwards, with the exception of Enterprise and Discovery, the rank was denoted here on the right, where the pips go, the rank pips. And, you know, moving forward, as we moved forward into the movies, what was kind of cool is when they went into Generations, they were still wearing the uniform that they were wearing at the end of Next Generation, which was, you know, again, was kind of cool. But they ended up you could see they was just starting to mix and meld and mesh. And some people started wearing the Voyager uniforms, which were kind of cool. And that lasted a movie. When they got to Star Trek 8, which was First Contact, wow, that's when they changed up the uniforms and they just looked hella sharp. I loved them. Absolutely loved those. I mean, as far as like post Star Trek 6 uniforms, those are a very close second favorite for me. I love them. They used them all the way from Star Trek 8 and then they did Star Trek 9, and then they started Star Trek 10, which was in Nemesis, and we won't talk about that movie because it was such a terrible movie. I'm sorry, Tom Hardy, but that movie was dog shit. So, going ahead with that, you move beyond the TNG era, and you get the Enterprise era, which they kind of reverted back to. They kind of went to the jumpsuit, which was kind of cool because they modeled it off after like contemporary flight suits. So they were they were a one-piece unit. They were a coverall design, and yeah, I mean, it looked like they could really, like utility pieces, like utility clothing. Everybody looked like they could fit into it comfortably. They felt like they could move around a lot, which was pretty cool. And again, given that it gave it that retro look on purpose because this was the series that took place before the time of Kirk. So of course we didn't have the two pieces. Then you move on to the likes of Star Trek Discovery, and I think they kind of did a nice little jump or a jaunt between what you saw in Star Trek, Enterprise. My apologies, Enterprise, and what was going to come in the original series, which would come in 10 years after where Discovery is set right now. So, again, they look great. They're functional. They probably look like they're pretty comfortable to wear. And in all that, I guess there's just a lot of design aesthetics that go into these uniforms, which are really kind of cool. The only ones I really, again, didn't like all that much were the ones from Star Trek the Motion Picture, which were the basically space pajamas. And I didn't particularly care for the uniform for the first 2 seasons of Next Generation, which were the basically the one-piece unitards that were zipped up in the front, Yeah, I mean, practically, for 2 years in Starfleet, everybody, all the guys wore rompers. But yeah, anyways, at that point, look, I think the whole thing is, I think there's a real design aesthetic that they take notice of and really take care with in Star Trek. So, if you have any comments, if you want to let me know what your favorite is, please, drop me a message down here. Even if you're like catching this after the live broadcast, don't be afraid to, drop me a comment and let me know what your favorites are or what your favorites aren't are. And it doesn't have to be just Starfleet. It could be anything. It could be the Klingons. It could be the Romulans. I mean, in TNG, basically Romulans were a bunch of 80s guys and girls with giant shoulder pads, and of course it carried on a little bit into the movies and whatnot. But still, yeah. If you like it, please don't hesitate to drop me a message. The other thing is, if you do like watching this show, let me know. Just say hey. Hit the like. Hit the subscribe onto the channel here. Hit the little bell so you get a little notification when I go live or when we drop a new video. And we'll be more than happy to sit there and, yeah. We'll be more than happy to talk to you and share our content with you. In the meantime, folks, I'm going to let you go because this has been fun talking about Star Trek uniforms. I've been your host, Lars Scenza, and I didn't say that at the beginning of the episode. I apologize. I'm sure, although you can see it right here, right there. See it? Right there. And we'll be back again on Wednesday, and we'll be back again on Friday this week, and basically every week for the next, let's say, probably 12 weeks. There we go. One episode, I'm going to be joined by my partner in crime, my hetero life mate, Patrick, here at the Red Shirt Geeks. He's going to be here on Treknicity live with me, and we're going to cover one Star Trek movie at a time. We're going to do one movie a week. So there'll be the live episode here on Mondays. There'll be one of the one of the movie episodes either Wednesday or Friday, and then I'll have another one I talk about. Just basically, I drop in there for your consumption. So, anyways, as always, have a great time. Be good to each other. Live long and prosper. And as always, rock out with your Spock out. See you later, folks. Have a great time.